Excellent. How about you, Aaron? Weigh in, buddy.
I think it's a difference in methodology. I don't have, I'm not privy to studies or whatever. I think it's a traditional, it's a, you look at it, it's in one way, it's a traditional form of no speak, show, and do through repetition. That's one side of that. On the other side is what I think we see a lot in the US is that you have an instructor that gets up and they start talking a lot, and so I would kind of address what we're talking, what the symptoms on one side of the coin with the symptoms on the other and compare the two.
Definitely.
Um, the benefits of the silence or not very little verbal clarifications is that it forces that student to lock in on what's happening, and it forces them to pay very close attention to what's going on. And in doing so, instead of teaching the student how to use a cookie cutter, the end result might be that that student can make a batch of cookies, right? So I think that sometimes when we talk too much, is that we drown out the individual essence of that student and their individual brilliance that they may have. And sometimes you may see a student that has a brilliant execution on something far beyond what the instruction was that they ever received, because that's their natural talent and ability. So when we take and we drive that cookie cutter onto the students, I think in one hand, they may become more educated in the form and more educated in the system, the presentation of the system, the nomenclature, and may look something closer to their teacher more quickly than with the other model. I believe more quickly. You're going to learn perhaps more quickly with the verbal cues and with all the auditory stuff. But your education is then going to be a little more shallow, and it's going to be maybe broader in a lot of ways, but it's going to be a little more shallow. Now you take that model on the other side, and everything that student gets, they had to find on their own. And so what they're actually developing themselves from the inside out versus on the other model from the outside, in trying to get something out of these students versus developing them. From my perspective, I've personally used both, and I believe that and so in doing that is a happy medium, because sometimes I think you just need to listen and or I'm sorry, you just need to observe and train and not seek outside for that answer, because the answer is in you. And so to allow a student to fail and fail and fail, and they can fail, pardon me.
That's your sensei calling saying, "Hey,
Right.
get that answer."
Right. But allow that student to fail, to fail, to fail, to fail, to fail until pow, aha, they got something, versus not working that hard and having it handed to them every step of the way. They're given, and then maybe they're looking around, always wanting somebody else to give them the answer. The flip side of it is that student that comes up, it's a little more difficult. It's but that student is able to pull their answers, the answers that they need over a period of time from within versus outside.
So, Aaron, are you saying leave them a little hungry each time?
Don't give them every piece. Yes, don't give them every piece of information, because if somebody knows everything, then their quest for knowledge is stymied, because you give them everything before they even know to ask the question. They've already been given the answer.
Yeah.
So they're skipping past. And here's one example. Way back when, developed some Kimmy drills and this way of soft falling in that. And people have done it before, but I had this little system, boom, 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 and ended up bringing. There was a class of people that came up together with this new system. And what ended up happening was that they completely excelled. They're taking break falls in like 3 months, like high level break falls. Boom, these guys are. But 2 years down the road, when you ask them to do Ikkyo, they don't necessarily know Ikkyo. They don't know Orinaite. They don't. There's a lot of stuff in the system that they don't know, but they can fall. And if you look back and you see them taking Kodagai's break falls, you would think they were far more advanced. But then when you talk to them about the variations or some of the essence of Aikido or some of these other things, and they're not as informed as what you might think they would be based on, say, their Kimmy in this case, where we've given them everything, and now maybe they haven't filled in the blanks. Thanks for hearing me out.
Yeah, very, very good. What I would interject on, excellent answers, beautiful articulation. The thing is, we're in a different time set, actually, I would share with you. Pre-internet, it was very hard to get this knowledge, right? But after the internet, and especially by now, that's not the issue anymore. The knowledge is out there, tons of knowledge. And the question then is, accessing that knowledge. Now, when we look at the question was, why would that sensei continue to use that philosophy, right? Knowing, or maybe they don't know, that is the least effective way of teaching, right?
So based on this, so the pretense of this discussion is that we all agree that this is an inefficient means of training. So I haven't been privy to that study or to that. So I'm at a disadvantage here because I'm not aware that it's been clinically proven that this is an inferior way of practice or study.
Yeah, to interject you, where you can go to one of the leading experts is deliberate practice and purposeful practice. It's the most extensive research on achievement, hitting your marks and everything. And this is a current knowledge out there, and it's more leading towards how to study, how to learn, how to reach the highest levels. And within that, there are set standards that are out there that says, hey, if you really want to learn, if you want to excel, this is what you do. And also in it, it teaches that if you don't, this is what you do. And it's called naive practice. And so when what I see here is that you have people who have access to this knowledge, and usually what will happen is most of that is outside the dojo. Very seldom have I seen, and not to say all dojos don't do it, where they're actually deliberately, aggressively researching the most current knowledge on how to train, how to teach, how to communicate better, and so on. Because nowadays, we don't live in the time when, I can go in and go to the sensei and live with him, 30 years in the mountaintops and everything, especially here in the Western, well, probably all the world now, is that everything is, there's a certain amount of time. You get a student in there, you got an hour maybe. Maybe your class has an hour and a half, and you're trying to get across to this person knowledge. And what I think the illusion of osmosis is that because of that sensei's ranking level, they believe they have that knowledge. And that I'm coming up the ramp, this is how my sensei did it, this is what's going on. So I don't necessarily have to look out to find that knowledge. And
that's a big topic. Yeah, that's a big topic because you have your athletic performance aspect of what I think you're talking about. There's a huge, if I understand what you're saying correctly, is a lot of what you're talking about is a performance aspect.
Well, no, not necessarily. It's also being an instructor, communicating. How do you communicate effectively with that person in the time frame? Team building. How do you get let's say a testing committee to work effectively as a team? How do you set goals? What is the best way to set goals? So these are actually practical skills beyond what would you call it? The physical aspect of it. Mm-hmm. And when you chase this back, you begin to see that there is a standard that says, hey, if you really want to keep going higher, you want to keep that beginner's mind, You have to go and study. And when you're in that world where you realize that, hey man, I got to get my skill level up, at work, I have to do presentations, just because I got promoted to a position of leadership, there's two styles, right? We understand that there's where you get promoted and you get it by not because you're a good leader, you're just promoted and you have that authority. Then you have the other person who maybe has earned that position and they get the leadership because people follow them. They like how they lead and so on. I think a lot of times in the dojos, what I'm seeing is it's the latter. It's that promotion by ranking, authority, and at that point we have that osmosis feeling that I don't need to go study what is the best way to communicate and so on in the dojos. So that's where I'm kind of kicking it around. Why would like the first one, why would you pick someone whose skill set isn't as good but they have high ranking versus someone who is really good that is a special in this, but they have that lower ranking?
And to be clear, you're not talking about the physical aspects of the art of Aikido. You're talking about organizational management and structure and training of people and codifying and standards and things like that. Is that true? You're not talking about the technical proficiency of the martial artist in the art that they're practicing?
Yeah, I would submit to you that to get the technical proficiency, you will have to use these other skills. And I'll clarify what I'm saying. It's not training that makes the difference. It's how you train that makes the difference. Now I can say this is Aikido, but how I train you to do Aikido, that's not Aikido.
No, that's your instructional method and style.
And instructional methods and style have a root in these other topics: communication, leadership, time management, goal setting. When you start looking at that, you realize for my student to really, get that value, if I really want to transmit my knowledge to them, I'm going to have to guide them also with giving an end result.
I'm trying to stay on a particular thread. I'm trying to follow the path of the discussion. I do think that there's separate. You have leadership, and then you have physical ability, right, and talent, and then you have what you're able to make with that physical ability and talent combined with your level of instruction that you've received from whoever your teachers are. And then all that mixes together to create, the person. I kind of see that in a lot of ways, some of this stuff is a little bit different. In other words, you could have somebody that's a strong leader and they don't necessarily know the technical ins and outs of what they're leading, right? But they're an effective, strong leader, and they rely on experts below them, lieutenants, if you will, as the technical, as the
where their weakness is, they get a
right.
special.
Right. You can't be the expert on everything. Right. So, but now, so I'm trying to apply sort of what I'm thinking in my head with what you're presenting. And I see that, leadership isn't necessarily technical ability, but if you have technical ability in the art, you're going to probably get yourself up to a position where then you can exercise some of that leadership. If you never get yourself up to a position, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of leadership that you're going to be executing. You might, most likely, but if you have those traits, you're probably gonna come up from a rank structure. Just because you have rank doesn't mean that you can teach. Just because you have rank doesn't mean that you can lead or that people will follow.
Correct. Can I interject?
Yeah, please.
We'll get Stephen here too. I submit to you that just because a person has a tendency to be a good leader, traits of a good leader, the only way that they can refine that is through study, through practice. There's a reason, and we know this to be true. It's not a hypothetical thing anymore.
Well, I
There,
would say experience.
well,
We
even
practice,
experience has been shown not to be it. Honest experience, it actually, and I would submit to you that it's been proven that it's people who are trained a certain way, a process that have less years of experience will have better knowledge or execution on a lot of things. And they did this a lot of studies with doctors. So my question is, if the rest of the world at the high levels of teachers and everything that are reaching high proficiency, I'm submitting to you that for inquiring, that why doesn't that take effect within our martial arts and the Aikidoists? And I submit to you that for looking, it's because this illusion
Right.
that as by gain ranking, I'm going to get that knowledge. I'm going to become a knowledgeable leader versus having to go and study and practice. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, going back exactly what you just said right there, back on our path, the path to mastering anything is basically you modeling someone who's already achieved what you want to do in the beginning. It's an individual thing. Are they immersing themselves in it? I mean, where it's everything are they doing to help grow? Spaced repetition, just your basic learning techniques. Okay. Now, earlier we were talking about with all the stuff out there, are we in a dilemma in a sense of we need to narrow it down? There's like too much stuff out there. Are we fooling ourselves by not being ourselves, by we're trying to emulating some 5 other senseis out there? And we got to be careful of that, because you just said it, there's so much knowledge out there. I think, at least in medicine, there's so much, I wind up going, wow, I got ADD. I got to bring it down. And we have to find ourselves instead of comparing ourselves to everybody and grabbing this, and this. What works for you the best on that teaching and growing?
Can I ask you a question on that, Smitty? See, this is the challenge in this topic. This is really good because it's true that there's a lot of knowledge, but because we're in a system and an age where that knowledge is condensed. In other words, it isn't a mystery of what the greatest leaders are doing. It's not a mystery what are the greatest communication. It's all been condensed. It's already been strange. And now it's simply having the desire based upon your goal to go, hey, I need to educate myself in that area.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, I need to educate myself in that area if it meets my goal. Now, my question is, how are you going to get that unless you go as a sensei, let's say, or instructor, based upon, you're trying to transmit a knowledge, right? So why do people think they don't have, why aren't we showing that this, if you want to communicate better, it's not because you're now a first dan, right? You're communicating better because you went to learn how to communicate better. And that's going to lead me into the next topic. Why do so many Aikidoists think they can gain their knowledge by osmosis in the dojo? For example, let's take a training, the methodology of teaching, right? We're a teacher. We want to get it across to the person. Usually we will simulate what our sensei taught us, right? But the question arises, is there a better way of doing that? And if there is, why aren't we trying to learn it and bring it into the community and say, hey, look, this has already been figured out. We need to find a way of implementing this so we produce better Aikidoists, more knowledgeable instructors, better business dojos. So we can make an impact.
Who's going to write those standards? Who's going to implement those standards and make them those standards?
Repeat the question.
Who's going to implement those standards that you just stated?
Yeah, that's where it's getting back to, do you have a person with low ranking who's an expert in that knowledge, sharing and leading? Or do you have a high ranking person who does not have expertise? And usually it's the other way around. It's high ranking with low knowledge in this area. let me put it this way. Let's say your dojo, right? You need more students. That goes into marketing and sales, and maybe how you're teaching also, but it's a marketing and sales problem, majority. So it would seem natural that I need to go get better at marketing or sales or hire someone to do that. But the illusion is I'm a fourth dan. I have that knowledge. And that's what I'm looking at, is asking, why is this happening? Is that any feedback?
So you're saying that just because you have that fourth dan, that people are going to come knocking at my door because I'm Steve and they all want to come see me? No, you've got to be out there. You have to work at it. I don't care how high you get. If you're not working at it, a stagnant water is a muddy pond.
How do you mean working it?
What's that?
What do you mean by working it?
You better be out there somehow, some way, marketing, whatever it may be, demos, flyers, advertising, internet. You got to be doing something. You can't just be stagnant.
I agree. Can I interject? We're communicating. I'm saying it's not just doing something. It's going to the best.
Right.
And learning from them and implementing that. If we do that other way, it doesn't work that well. It's a low standard. It's like the sensei who's saying nothing in the dojo and teaching the least most effective way versus going and saying, hey, you know what? I want to teach the best way I can. Not saying that not talking is not correct, right? But it's not the primary. This is what we're inquiring into. Yeah.
So you can't be jack of all trades, you're saying. So we need to designate certain tasks to people that know what they're doing versus me, the upper rank, doing it all. Is that what you kind of saying?
Yes, and I think the reason the upper rank does it all is the illusion of osmosis.
Illusion, ego, you're in charge, my dojo.
My seventh dan, eighth dan, whatever.
This is